Hello everyone, my name is Eric, and in this video we're going to be talking about lenses. Grab your coffee, your tea, your preferred beverage, and let's get started. Alright, let's talk about lenses. Just like cameras, we have a plethora of choices for lenses. So let's talk about these lenses that are here and hopefully be able to give you enough information that you'll be able to use to choose lenses for your photography. So let's start with two types of lenses as far as you have crop sensor lenses and then you have full sensor lenses. So the difference is in the back part where you actually connect the lens to the camera. So this is your crop sensor lens and this is your full frame lens. As you can see, the square part is bigger on the full frame than it is on the crop sensor. So what does that mean? That means if you put a crop sensor lens on a full frame camera, the sensor is bigger than this hole. So what happens is you'll see the picture when you pull it up to see it, you'll see basically that frame, that black frame will be around the edges of the camera, or I'm sorry, of the image, because this lens will not cover the entire sensor. All right. So that's full frame versus crop sensor. Whether it's crop sensor or full frame, doesn't matter. You'll have what's considered kit lenses and then your more pro line lenses. So your kit lenses are going to be what's called a variable aperture lens, where your more professional lenses are going to be constant aperture lenses. So what does that mean? So first let me show you. So on this is a variable aperture lens. So here in front, you'll see the numbers that say 3.5 hyphen 5.6. So what does that mean? That means that one, the widest that the aperture, or basically the iris in the lens, will open is 3.5. And that's at the widest angle or the widest focal length, which this one is 18 millimeters. As you zoom in, what happens is that aperture or that iris starts to close down. Now, what does that mean? Well, what happens is you'll have one exposure or one type of brightness in the picture, and then as that aperture closes, it lets less light in. Therefore, if you take another picture, that picture is going to be darker. So your constant aperture lenses, so this was a constant aperture, but it doesn't have it in the front because it's different. So on this one, it's actually on the body of the lens. So right here, you'll see FE 2.8, and then there's no number after it. With that, then it doesn't matter whether you're at, actually, so this lens is also a constant aperture. It's a 2.8 as well, but this is a zoom lens, this is a prime lens, and we'll get to that in just a second. But at the widest angle, which is 24 millimeters, if I'm at 2.8 and I zoom in all the way to 70, it'll stay at 2.8. It won't close down like your variable aperture lenses. Now, why is that important? Like I said before, if you're taking a picture at 18 millimeters and you're at 3.5, when you zoom in to 55 millimeters or even 40 millimeters, that aperture is already closed down to 5.6, so your picture is going to be a little darker. It's nothing that you did wrong. You didn't bump your camera and accidentally change the settings. It's because the lens automatically closes it down. So let's talk about primes versus zooms, since we kind of hit up on that. So these two lenses are prime lenses, and what that means is they are a single focal length. This one is 90 millimeters, and this one is 15. This is a wide angle lens, and then this is a macro lens. And we'll get to macro here in a second when I get to specialty lenses. But basically what that means is if you want the subject to be bigger in your frame, you actually have to walk closer to your subject. And then if you want more space and you want the subject smaller in the frame, then you have to walk back and make the subject smaller. Then you have your zoom lenses, which, as they say, they zoom. So from 24 to 70. And then this one is a 70 to 200. So it picks off where this one leaves off and then zooms in all the way to 200. They also have more telephoto lenses, kind of look like this, where they'll be 100 to 400, 200 to 600, but basically they zoom. So you don't have to do as much walking if you need to make your subject bigger or smaller in the frame. Right? Pros and cons of each. So typically your prime lenses are going to be just a little bit, sometimes a lot sharper than your zoom lenses. But as technology has evolved, your zoom lenses are almost, if not on par with prime lenses now. This lens here, this is a Sigma 24 to 70 art lens, which is their basically pro line. So they have art, they have sports, and then they have, what's the other one? I'll link it in there, but basically the art lens is their top lens. And then this is a Sony lens, a 70 to 200 G Master. So this is the version 1. They now have a version 2 out. But basically for Sony, the G Master is their top level, pro level lenses. And this one I use a lot for portrait photography, or if I'm out doing landscapes, if I want to do what they call intimate landscapes and basically just fill up a section of the landscape and make it big in your frame, then I'll use this. As far as image quality, like I said, technology has now evolved so much that image quality is almost on par between zoom lenses and prime lenses. Specialty lenses. So you have specialty lenses out there like architecture lenses, which what they do is allow the architecture to actually be straight up and down and not bow out. And basically what that's called is distortion, so lens distortion. And typically when you have wider angle lenses, that's when you get the distortion. So then you also have, on the other end of the spectrum, you have macro lenses. And what macro lenses allow you to do is to get much closer to your subject and still be able to focus. So this particular macro lens is a 1-to-1. So basically what it does, if I set the focus distance to be 1-to-1, and there's a number there, it says 1.1 in blue, what I can do is I can get the lens close enough so once that subject is in focus, then it's actually going to be 1-to-1. So whatever I see on the lens or in the image is going to be the actual size of the subject. For instance, if you see in the channel trailer, there is one image that I used where there's an ant on the flower. I used this lens at a 1-to-1. So the size of that ant that you see on that picture is the actual size in real life. So with these lenses, you also have a 2-to-1, and I believe they now have 3-to-1, maybe even 4-to-1. So basically what that means is your image is going to be 3 or 4 times the size of real life. So that's what the macro lenses do. Then you have auto lenses, and then you have full manual lenses. So all these are auto lenses. So basically the focus and the aperture can be controlled right in the camera. So if I want to change the aperture from 2.8 to f8, I can just do it right in the camera. And if I need to change the focus, I just press the shutter button and then it does the automatic focus. So then you have your full manual lenses. So nothing will work on the camera. So if you try to do the autofocus, it won't work. If you try to change the aperture on the camera, it won't work. Everything has to be done right on the lens. And this is typically, it's a way for manufacturers to make cost-effective lenses. So if you see right here in this ring, this is where I change the aperture. So this lens particularly goes from f2 to f22, and then this ring here is where I focus. And because this is a prime lens, there's no zoom. So it's focus and aperture. That's pretty much the nitty-gritty of lenses. There are a lot of lenses out there, and like I said, depending on the type of photography that you want to do, now you kind of have a base knowledge of what zoom lenses are, what prime lenses are. You have specialty lenses, wide angle lenses, and I think probably the most important to know is to make sure that you have either, if you have a crop sensor body camera, make sure you have a crop sensor lens, where actually you can actually put a full frame lens on a crop sensor, but you can't put a crop sensor lens on a full frame. So with that said, if you have a full frame, don't buy a crop sensor lens. Then also, if you want to check to make sure that you know whether you have a variable aperture lens or a constant aperture lens. Because like I said, it'll throw you off if one shot is darker than the other. But that is the basics as far as lenses. If there's any questions about lenses that I did not cover that you may have, just put them in the comments below and I will try and answer every question as quickly as I can. With that said, if this video was helpful, hit the like button, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. Every time a video uploads to the channel, you'll get alerted, and that way you won't miss any. See you in the next one.